Right now, picture someone you'd call a genuinely good person, kind to strangers, gentle with animals, the type of person who apologizes to furniture after bumping into it. Now, here's an uncomfortable question. Under the right conditions, could that same person do something you'd consider monstrous? Most people answer instantly. No, never. Not them. But psychology has spent over 60 years proving that answer wrong again and again in ways that should genuinely unsettle you. In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram ran one of the most famous experiments in the history of the field. Ordinary volunteers, teachers, clerks, engineers, people with no history of cruelty whatsoever, were told to administer what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to another person simply because a man in a lab coat calmly told them to continue. There were no real shocks. The other person was an actor. But the volunteers didn't know that. Milgram predicted almost no one would go all the way to the maximum dangerous-sounding voltage. He was wrong. Roughly 65% of participants did, not because they were cruel, but because a calm authority figure kept saying four simple words. Please continue. The experiment requires you to continue. This wasn't a study of evil people. Milgram specifically recruited ordinary members of the public. What he uncovered wasn't a hidden cruelty inside them. It was something more disturbing. Under the right structure of authority and gradual escalation, ordinary people will do things they would have sworn beforehand they were incapable of. There's a second piece to this puzzle, and it comes from a very different kind of experiment. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo created a simulated prison at Stanford University, randomly assigning college students to play either guards or prisoners for what was supposed to be a 2-week study. It was shut down after 6 days. The students playing guards, who had shown no signs of cruelty during screening, began escalating control over the students playing prisoners with startling speed. Not because they were bad people cast into a bad role, but because the situation itself, the uniform, the power imbalance, the sense of being watched and expected to maintain order, pulled behavior out of them that surprised even Zimbardo. Both of these studies point toward the same uncomfortable conclusion. Psychologists call it the fundamental attribution error in reverse. We tend to explain other people's terrible actions by pointing to their character. He must be a bad person. She must have always been like this. But research consistently shows that situational forces, authority, group pressure, gradual escalation, anonymity, often matter more than individual character in predicting who commits harm. Philosopher Hannah Arendt observed something similar while studying the trial of a Nazi official responsible for organizing mass atrocities. She expected to find a monster. Instead, she found something she called the banality of evil, an ordinary bureaucratic man who saw himself not as a villain, but as someone simply following orders and doing his job efficiently. This doesn't mean everyone is secretly capable of anything under any circumstance. Most people, even under significant pressure, refuse to cross certain lines. What the research actually reveals is more specific. There are identifiable conditions that make harmful behavior more likely, and understanding them is not the same as excusing them. Psychologists have identified several recurring ingredients. Gradual escalation, where each step feels only slightly worse than the last, making it psychologically easier to continue than to suddenly stop. Diffusion of responsibility, where a person feels less accountable because someone else, an authority, a group, a system, appears to be directing the outcome. And dehumanization, where the people being harmed are mentally recategorized as less than fully human, making cruelty feel less like cruelty. Remove any single one of these ingredients, and harmful behavior becomes measurably less likely. Keep all of them present at once, and psychology shows, again and again, that ordinary people cross lines they never believed they would. This is not a comfortable idea. It's much easier to believe that harmful people are simply a different category of human being, fundamentally separate from the rest of us. That belief feels safe. It lets you assume you'd never be capable of the same thing. But the actual research suggests something closer to the opposite. The line between an ordinary person and someone capable of causing serious harm isn't as fixed or as far away as most people assume. It's shaped by pressure, structure, and circumstance, more than most people are comfortable admitting, which is exactly why understanding this matters. Not to excuse harmful behavior, but to recognize the conditions that make it more likely in workplaces, in institutions, in any system where authority, escalation, and distance from consequence are allowed to quietly build. The most unsettling discovery in the history of this research was never that monsters exist. It's that most of the time they don't have to. Ordinary people under the right conditions are enough.